I'm so sorry, ma'am, but the card was declined. Emily stared blankly at the receptionist, her hand resting on the cool marble of the check-in counter. An aching flu had settled deep in her bones, and a throbbing headache pulsed behind her eyes. She had dragged herself to the doctor's office this morning, slick with a cold sweat, only to be met with the shrill, unapologetic beep of the credit card terminal. That can't be right. I just used it yesterday, she pleaded, her voice hoarse. Could you please try it one more time? At Emily's desperate request, the receptionist swiped the card again, but the result was the same. Declined. The impatient glares of the other patients in the waiting room felt like daggers in her back. A man cleared his throat loudly, muttering, "What's the holdup? There are sick people waiting." A hot flush of shame crept up Emily's neck. She fumbled through her wallet and pulled out a backup card she kept for emergencies. But the machine spat out the same mocking tone. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the receptionist said, her patience wearing thin. "This card has also been suspended. You'll have to call your credit card company directly. Could I help the next patient, please?" Unable to speak, Emily simply nodded, grabbed her purse, and fled from the counter. She collapsed into a chair in a far corner of the lobby, her hands trembling as she dialed the number for customer service. The short time it took for the call to connect felt like an eternity. "Thank you for calling. This is Sarah. How can I help you today?" "Hi. Yes. I'm at the doctor's office, and both of my cards were just declined," Emily said, her voice shaking. "I'm so embarrassed. Can you tell me what's wrong?" The sound of clacking keys filled the silence, followed by a long pause. When the representative spoke again, her tone was grave. "Ma'am, I'm seeing here that both cards under your name were placed on an emergency freeze by our fraud department this morning. We detected a series of high-value purchases over the last 3 days that are completely inconsistent with your usual spending habits. We need to verify if you made these charges yourself." "High-value purchases?" Emily repeated, bewildered. "I've been sick in bed for days. The only place I've been is the grocery store." Her voice rose, and a few people glanced her way, but she didn't care. The list the representative read off was nothing short of staggering. On Thursday evening, there was a charge for $750 at the Beverly Hilton. On Friday afternoon, a purchase of $2,500 was made at the Gucci boutique on Rodeo Drive. And then last night, a single payment of $4,500 was made at the Tiffany & Co. in the Grove. There was also a $3,000 cash advance taken out. The total is well over $10,000. "Ma'am, are you certain you didn't make these purchases?" Emily felt her heart drop into her stomach. A luxury hotel, a designer handbag, a $4,000 piece of jewelry. For a woman who spent her life haggling at flea markets to save a few dollars, these were figures from a fantasy world. Then, a single face flashed in her mind. Her husband, David. He had been coming home past midnight all week, using client dinners and sales meetings as his excuse. Can you tell me the locations of those places?" Emily asked, biting her trembling lip. The addresses the representative gave her were all near David's office and in the neighborhoods of the clients he claimed to frequent. A wave of betrayal washed over Emily, making the room spin. While his sick wife was being publicly humiliated over a $50 copay, her husband was out on the town, swiping her credit card for luxuries worth thousands. Emily stormed out of the clinic and immediately called David. It rang 5 or 6 times before he finally answered, his voice dripping with annoyance. "What? I told you I'm in a sales meeting. Where are you right now?" she demanded. "The hotel? The designer bag? The jewelry? Was that you?" "The credit card company just told me my cards are frozen." "What is going on?" There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. But when David finally spoke, there was no apology, only rage. "Are you crazy? Who do you think you are, yelling at your husband like that?" "That was all for business. I had no choice." "The client's wife. You know, the one who signs off on the deal? It was her birthday. I had to get her on our side, so I bought her a nice bag and a necklace." "Is that such a crime?" "What?" Emily shrieked. "You bought a client's wife a $4,500 necklace. Are you insane? I just got kicked out of the doctor's office because I couldn't pay the bill, and you're out there showering some other woman with designer gifts?" "She's not some other woman. She's the key to our financial future. And I used your card because it has the higher credit limit. Stop being so dramatic. I'll pay it all back when I make money." God, this attitude of my money. Your money in a marriage is so pathetic. "I'm busy. I have to go." The line went dead. Emily stood frozen on the sidewalk, clutching her phone, her body racked with tremors. "I'll pay it back when I make money" was a lie she had heard on repeat for the past 10 years. In reality, their living expenses were covered by the rental income from a small property Emily's parents had left her. She had never seen a dime of the money David supposedly earned. On the way home, a cold fury began to build in her chest. The years of sacrifice flashed before her eyes, cashing in her savings to pay for her mother-in-law's medical bills, selling her own mother's heirlooms to pay for her sister-in-law's wedding. She felt like a fool. When she opened the front door, she saw David splayed out on the living room sofa. So much for his meeting. He was already home, cracking open a can of beer. He didn't even bother to look at her as he grunted. "You're back? You totally ruined the mood of my meeting with that hysterical phone call. You probably cost me the deal. And I'm starving. So make me something to eat. Something spicy." Emily dropped her bag on the floor and stood before him. "Give me my cards. Now." "What's the point? You said they were frozen." He scoffed. "I'll unfreeze them and give them back later. Just let me relax." "Who are you to unfreeze them?" "Give them to me right now," she said, her voice dangerously low. "If you don't, I'm calling the police to report them stolen. You know it's theft, even if you're family, right?" At the sight of her steely resolve, David faltered. He grumbled as he pulled the 2 cards from his wallet and threw them on the coffee table. "Here, take them. God, you're so cheap. You've really changed, you know that? You've become so small-minded. This was all for our benefit, and you can't even see that. Family? You have the nerve to use that word?" Emily's voice cracked. "While I was being humiliated because I couldn't afford to see a doctor, you were putting a diamond necklace around another woman's neck. Is that what family is?" "Ugh. Shut up. I told you. It was for business. If you keep this up, I'm going to have to make some changes. What man wants a wife who sabotages his career?" He shot back, still completely oblivious. "Now, are you going to make dinner or not?" Emily stared at her husband, a hollow laugh escaping her lips. The old Emily would have dissolved into tears and retreated to the kitchen. But not anymore. Right there, on the spot, she dialed the credit card company again. "Hello. It's Emily again. The cards you suspended earlier. I don't want them unfrozen. I want to report them as stolen and permanently close the accounts. In fact, I want to cancel every card in my name, including any authorized user cards, the Easy Pass, and any linked payment methods. Yes, this is the primary account holder. Please process it immediately." David, who had been sipping his beer, slowly lowered the can. His face turned ashen. "Are you out of your mind? If you cancel everything, how am I supposed to pay for gas? What about my business expenses? Cancel that order right now." He lunged for her phone, but Emily sidestepped him, coolly waiting for the representative's final confirmation before ending the call. "That's your problem now," she said, her voice like ice. "Your business expenses, your client dinners. You can use your own money and your own credit to pay for them. You will never spend another cent of my money again." Emily walked into the bedroom and locked the door behind her. She could hear David kicking the door and screaming obscenities, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace. It was as if a crushing weight she had carried for over a decade had finally been lifted. But this was only the beginning. From the back of her desk drawer, she pulled out a dusty folder of documents she had prepared long ago just in case. "You love to talk about family, David," she whispered to the empty room. "Well, I'm about to tear that sacred little institution of yours to the ground. You'd better be ready." A fierce determination burned in Emily's eyes. The moment her card was declined for that measly copay wasn't an end, it was the beginning of her new life. "Your business expenses? Is this what you call your goddamn business expenses?" Emily was sitting at the dining room table, surrounded by a mountain of paper. She had spent the entire night printing out credit card statements, and now she slammed the thick stack onto the floor. The printer had whined and groaned, spitting out pages that now covered the living room in a sea of white. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her fingertips trembled with rage. Nowhere in the statements was there a record of a carton of eggs from the grocery store or a bottle of flu medicine from the pharmacy. Instead, the pages were filled with names that made her head spin. Shaking, Emily opened a map app on her phone and began searching for them, one by one. The Gucci boutique on Rodeo Drive, the jeweler in Apgujeong, the lounge at a 5-star hotel in Beverly Hills. The images that appeared on her screen were from another world, places Emily had never dreamed of setting foot in. A heavy stone settled in her chest, making it hard to breathe. What truly made her doubt her sanity was a recurring charge. Once a week, from the same designer clothing store. This is business, she muttered, her voice cracking. What kind of business requires buying a new designer dress every single week? A single tear fell, smudging the ink on a line that read, "The Beverly Hilton, room service, $850. Emily grabbed a calendar and began cross-referencing David's business trips with the dates on the credit card statements. The correlation was terrifyingly precise. October 23rd, a Friday. He said he had a conference out of state, but he was right here, at a hotel in Beverly Hills. November 5th, a Saturday. Supposedly a golf outing with a client, another hotel stay. And November 12th, the Thursday, he came home reeking of alcohol. He spent $600 at a restaurant in West Hollywood. Emily circled the dates on the calendar with a red pen. Just then, the bedroom door creaked open, and David emerged, toweling his hair. "What are you doing up so early? And what's with all this paper?" he asked, glancing at the floor before flopping onto the sofa without a care in the world. Emily's eyes burned with fury as she snatched a single statement from the pile. "Explain this. You said it was for business. Why were you at a hotel on a weekend? Why were you spending thousands of dollars at designer stores in the middle of the weekday?" "Oh, this again?" he sighed, exasperated. "Do you have any idea how hard it is to keep clients happy? If they want to play golf on the weekend and are too tired to drive home, you book them a hotel. That's just common courtesy. And to close a deal, you have to win over their wives. That's networking 101. You've never worked in the corporate world, so you wouldn't understand. This is all an investment." "An investment? Then what's this receipt?" Emily shot back, her voice shaking. "A women's dress, size 2, for $2,500. You know I'm a size 8, right? How did you know the client's wife's exact size? And you bought one 3 separate times from the same store." She shoved the 3 receipts in his face. For a split second, David's eyes darted back and forth, a flicker of panic. But he quickly recovered, his expression turning to one of brazen defiance. "The saleswoman recommended it. She said it was their most popular size. How the hell would I know? I just paid for whatever she gave me." "Liar. Look at this reservation from the West Hollywood restaurant. Reservation for Chloe, party of 2. Did you take your male client on a date to a $600 tasting menu? It's a couples-only restaurant, a no-kid zone. Was your client a woman?" "You're driving me insane," David roared, slamming his fist on the table. "So what if I took him somewhere nice? Can't I treat a client well? Are you accusing me of something? After all the shit I put up with for this family?" Emily let out a bitter laugh. The audacity was breathtaking. He was cheating on her with her own money and still had the gall to act indignant. "If it was a business expense, you should have used a corporate card. Why did you use mine? You have your own cards. The corporate card has a ridiculously low limit, and you know mine are temporarily maxed out." "Maxed out? Or suspended for non-payment, just like last year, when I had to use my own rental income to pay off your $5,000 credit card debt. You begged me on your hands and knees, swearing it would never happen again. And now you're using my card to take some other tramp to a hotel." At her words, David's face turned a blotchy red. Cornered, he decided to change tactics. "Watch your mouth. Some other tramp? You're really losing it. Maybe being sick has messed with your head. If you keep acting like this, I'm not going to want to come home anymore." "Good. Don't," Emily said coldly. "In fact, you won't be able to. Today, I'm going to the bank to formally separate our finances, and I'm reporting every single one of your business expenses as fraudulent charges. You can pay for those designer clothes and hotel rooms yourself. I'm done letting you drag my life into your mountain of debt." As Emily stood up to gather her documents, David panicked and grabbed her arm roughly. "Are you crazy? If you report that, you'll ruin my credit score. What about my reputation? Stop it right now. Did you think about my credit score when you were destroying it?" she retorted, yanking her arm away. "I don't care if you're ruined. As far as I'm concerned, we're already over." Emily turned and walked back toward the bedroom, locking the door. She could hear him pounding on it, screaming, "Open the door, you psycho." But she didn't shed a single tear. Just then, her phone buzzed relentlessly. The caller ID read, "Mother-in-law." A cold smile touched Emily's lips. She ignored the call and turned her phone off. She knew exactly why her husband's family was calling. They had heard about the canceled cards and were about to demand their money train be put back on track. As night fell, Emily lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. She never imagined that the marriage she had entered into with such hope would end up as a disgusting pile of receipts. But there was no more time for sorrow. David, she thought, all those fancy gifts you bought for that woman, they're about to become the rope that hangs you. I'll make sure of it. Emily clenched her jaw. This was the start of a war, and it was a war she had no intention of losing. The frigid pre-dawn air was shattered by the violent buzzing of Emily's phone at 6 a.m. Squinting at the screen, she saw the words sister-in-law glowing back at her. A deep sigh escaped her lips as she answered. A call at this hour from Jessica, her husband's sister who never contacted her otherwise, was a very bad sign. Emily? It's me. Is now a good time to talk? Jessica's voice on the other end was trembling, on the verge of tears. Emily sat up in bed, her own voice flat and cold. What is it, Jessica? It's 6 in the morning. Emily. Mom called me at dawn. She said you and David had a huge fight? He couldn't even go home. He's been wandering around outside all night. How could you do that to him? Emily gritted her teeth. She could just picture David, who had been snoring on the living room sofa last night, calling his mother to play the victim. The audacity of it made her blood boil. It wasn't a fight. It was a discovery of what your brother has been doing with my credit cards. You must have heard about it from him, right? Emily, you don't know how stressed he's been lately, Jessica pleaded. He's getting pressure from his bosses about his sales numbers, and the younger guys are trying to push him out. He told me he's felt suicidal. Of course, he has to spend money on client entertainment and gifts. Are you really going to print out statements and hound him for every little thing? A hollow laugh escaped Emily's lips. If his sales numbers are bad, isn't it common sense to cut back on spending? Or is racking up thousands of dollars in debt on someone else's credit card for designer bags and luxury hotels your idea of what a responsible family man does? He's not someone else. He's your husband. You're so cold, Emily. Can't you see he's running himself into the ground trying to make a sale? All you see are the numbers on a credit card bill. As Jessica's voice grew shriller, Emily held the phone slightly away from her ear. Then, in a low, firm tone, she asked, Jessica, what's the real reason you called me this morning? I doubt it was just to defend your brother. It's because you're being so heartless. He had no choice but to use that money for work. And you go and report it as fraud and freeze his cards? How is he supposed to manage his career? He has a client meeting today. Are you trying to destroy his reputation? His reputation? Emily scoffed. What about my reputation? Now that I'm buried in a mountain of debt under my name, do you really think it's okay for a husband to just borrow his wife's credit cards without permission? That it's fine as long as he says he'll pay it back later? Of course. Your family. He's not a stranger. He needed some flexibility with the money and said he'd make it up later. Why can't you wait? Why are you treating him like a common criminal? A chilling smirk spread across Emily's face. She decided to change tactics to exploit the cracks in Jessica's story. But Jessica, how do you know all the details of what my card was used for? David told me it was for client entertainment, but it seems he told you he borrowed the card. Which story is it? A sharp intake of breath on the other end. The panic was palpable. I heard him complaining to Mom. He said you were trying to ruin him over a few charges. I see. So you must have also heard about the $2,500 handbag charged at the Rodeo Drive boutique. Do you know why he was there that day? I already told you. It was a gift for a client's wife. Emily now knew for sure. An image of a flashy photo from Jessica's social media feed flashed in her mind. Jessica, that new designer bag you posted on Instagram a few days ago. The one with the shopping bag from the Rodeo Drive store. You wrote that a friend gave it to you as a gift. Was that friend's name, by any chance, David? A heavy silence hung in the air, so thick Emily could feel the tension through the phone. What? What are you talking about? Jessica stammered. Are you accusing me of something? Some friends from my book club all pitched in to get me that for my birthday. Who are you to snoop on my private life? Jessica was shouting now, but her voice was quivering at the edges. Emily pressed on, relentlessly. What a coincidence. The day my card was used to buy a handbag at that exact store on Rodeo Drive is the same day you posted a picture with that store's shopping bag. Even the time of day is nearly identical. Are you accusing me of pressuring David to buy me a bag? Oh, my God, this is unbelievable. I knew you always looked down on me, thought I was unfashionable, but now you're calling me a thief too. It's not an accusation. It's a certainty, Emily stated calmly. All this time, you knew your brother was using my money to give you an allowance and buy you designer bags, and you gladly took it. You knew he was bleeding your sister-in-law dry. But you kept your mouth shut and played the we're family card to gaslight me, didn't you? Losing all composure, Jessica began to spew venom. You're insane. Fine. So what if David bought me one back? What have you ever done for this family since you married into it? You thought you were living the high life on my brother's money, but it turns out you're just a selfish, greedy bitch. You don't deserve to be a part of this family. Emily laughed, a cold, sharp sound. You're right, and I'm happily revoking my membership. And Jessica, you'd better hold on tight to that handbag. Because soon enough, you're going to see exactly how it's going to drag both you and your brother down. Emily hung up the phone, cutting off Jessica's shrill screams. She threw her phone onto the bed, her hands shaking with rage. Her own sister-in-law had been flaunting a designer bag bought with her money, while simultaneously helping her brother paint his wife as a hysterical madwoman. She picked up her phone again and took screenshots of Jessica's social media page. The photo with the caption, "Thank you, bestie," was a monument to their deceit. Emily saved each picture, a grim smile on her face. Her reflection in the dark screen was gaunt, but her eyes were sharper than they had ever been. She opened the bedroom door. David was still passed out on the sofa, reeking of stale beer. Silently, Emily walked to the front door and put on her shoes. Hey, where are you going? David mumbled, cracking his eyes open. Dressing up to meet someone this early? Emily didn't even grant him a response as she opened the door. Are you deaf? Are you really going to be like this? If you don't unfreeze those cards today, I swear I'm not going to be responsible for what happens. Ignoring his pathetic threats, Emily walked down the stairs. The tears streaming down her cheeks weren't tears of sadness, but of rage and resolve. They were all in on it, she thought, hiding behind the name of family while they bled me dry. Emily clenched her fists and headed for her lawyer's office. She would no longer be a victim. She vowed to take away the two things they held most dear, their reputation and their money, in the most devastating way possible. Emily sat huddled in the corner of a dimly lit cafe, tucked away in a quiet alley near her house. A steaming cup of coffee sat untouched in front of her. Her stomach was in too many knots to take a sip. With trembling hands, she pulled a faded leather-bound notebook from the depths of her purse. It was from 5 years ago, a diary containing the painful records from the day her life had first fallen apart. As she turned the dusty pages, her eyes twitched. The notes she had scrawled in a state of anguish back then. Her husband's credit card charges were eerily identical to the pile of statements she had printed this morning. Beverly Hills Hotel, $700. West Hollywood Restaurant, $550. Designer Boutique, $1,800. Her lips quivered. The locations had changed slightly, but the pattern of spending, the flow of extravagance, was a mirror image of the present. 5 years ago, when she had first caught David cheating, he had groveled at her feet, a pathetic mess of tears and snot. Emily, I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. It was just a stupid thing with some people from work. I got swept up in the moment. It wasn't me. Please, just give me one more chance. I can't live without you and our family. Back then, Emily had believed his crocodile tears. Or rather, she had wanted to believe them. They didn't have children, but after more than a decade together, the weight of their shared history and the pressure to keep the marriage intact had blinded her. To pay off the massive credit card debt David had accumulated, Emily had secretly sold the jewelry her mother had left her. She had even taken out a high-interest loan, practically from a loan shark, all because she couldn't bear the thought of her husband losing face. I was the world's biggest fool for believing it was a mistake, she whispered, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. A single tear fell onto the notebook, smearing the 5-year-old ink. Placing the old records next to the recent statements was a revelation. It was all there. A hotel stay, followed by a meal at an expensive restaurant, then a gift from a designer store, and a cash advance. The entire process was a well-rehearsed formula. This wasn't a mistake, she thought. This was a pattern. This was his life. Emily began to examine the addresses more closely. Then, her eyes froze on a word from 5 years ago. Pasadena, the city where his previous affair partner had lived. The new statements also had 3 charges from a cafe and a sushi restaurant in Pasadena. Her heart began to pound violently in her chest. Could it be? Is he still seeing the same woman? Or is it just Pasadena again? She tried to recall the name she had secretly seen on David's phone all those years ago. A text message he had accidentally sent to her instead of the other woman. I miss you, Jenna. Emily immediately started searching online and on social media, but with a common name like Jenna and just a city. Nothing concrete came up. But one thing was certain. The charges in Pasadena were all on weekends when David had claimed to be at a golf outing. Emily covered her face with her hands, a wave of misery washing over her. David's pathetic excuses from 5 years ago echoed in her ears. I was drunk. I don't even remember it. It will never happen again. Her forgiveness hadn't been a chance for him to repent. It had been a license to continue sinning without consequence. Emily uncapped her pen and, in the final blank space of the notebook, she wrote, "Same pattern as 5 years ago. Not a mistake, but a habit." Forgiveness was his get-out-of-jail-free card. Just then, her phone rang loudly. It was David. Emily stared at the screen with cold eyes and declined the call. A text message immediately followed. "Hey, where are you? Stop this nonsense and come home so we can talk. This is so childish for a married couple." Emily read the message and deleted it without a second thought. Childish? That was a rich word, coming from a man who cheated on his wife with her own credit card. Almost immediately, the phone rang again. This time, it was her mother-in-law, Helen. Emily took a deep breath and answered. "Are you out of your mind? How dare you ignore your mother-in-law's calls? You get yourself home this instant." Helen's shrill voice screeched through the phone, echoing in the quiet cafe. Emily replied, her own voice devoid of emotion. "Hello, Helen. I'm not at home right now." "Not at home? What do you mean, not at home? You just up and leave without making your husband breakfast? David is sick with worry." Helen shrieked. "Did you block David's cards? He's telling me he can't even buy a cup of coffee." Emily had to stifle a bitter laugh. Helen didn't care about her son's infidelity. Her only concern was his access to credit. "Helen, do you have any idea what your son has been doing with those cards? It's the same thing as 5 years ago. He's seeing another woman, using my cards to buy her designer gifts and take her to luxury hotels." "Don't you talk such nonsense. A man in his line of work sometimes has to entertain women. That's part of the business. A good wife should be understanding and supportive, not accuse her husband of having an affair. It's because you're always undermining him that he looks for comfort elsewhere. This is all your fault." Helen's complete refusal to acknowledge reality was stunning. Emily held the phone slightly away from her ear, her hand trembling, but her voice remained as cold and sharp as a razor. "Helen, I'm not the same Emily I was 5 years ago. Back then, I stayed silent for the foolish idea of keeping the family together. Not anymore. Let your son clean up his own messes." "What? Are you talking back to your mother-in-law? If you don't come home right now, I'll call your parents and ask them what kind of daughter they raised. I'll turn your whole family upside down." The threat against her parents was the final straw. Fire flashed in Emily's eyes. "My parents? Don't you dare speak their names with your filthy mouth. And you don't need to come looking for me, because I'm not coming back to that house. From now on, the only place you'll see me and David together is in a courtroom. Goodbye." "Ah, you little..." Emily hit the end call button before Helen could finish her screech. Without a moment's hesitation, she turned her phone off completely. From her purse, Emily pulled out a business card. A friend, a prominent divorce attorney, had given it to her years ago, saying, "Use this when you really need it. David, Helen, and the rest of you," Emily thought, her hand gripping the card tightly. "That family you cherish so much. I'm about to tear it to shreds." She wiped away the tears on her cheeks. They weren't tears of sadness, but a declaration of war, a promise of brutal revenge. The only thing left for Emily now was to drag them all down to hell with her. Emily sat hunched on the edge of the sofa in the law office's waiting room. The phone on her lap vibrated nonstop, the screen lighting up relentlessly. The same two words glared back at her each time: mother-in-law. Emily couldn't bring herself to answer, staring instead at a framed print on the wall. But the buzzing was incessant. A moment later, the screen flashed again. Mother-in-law. During the hour-long consultation with her lawyer, a staggering 22 calls had come through. As she walked down the hallway after the meeting, the buzzing continued from inside her purse. A persistent, maddening sound like the wings of an insect trying to eat away at her soul. With a trembling hand, Emily pulled out the phone. 3 missed calls. She let out a long sigh and leaned against the wall. Her text messages were already filled with dozens of poisoned arrows. "Answer your phone. I need to know what's going on. Is this how a daughter-in-law behaves, trying to ruin her own family?" Emily deleted the venomous messages one by one. But as she did, the phone screamed to life again. This time, she didn't hesitate. She pressed the answer button. Why aren't you answering my calls? Do you know how many times I've tried to reach you? Have you no respect for your elders? Helen's sharp voice pierced her ear. Emily stood perfectly still, her reply calm and measured. I was in a meeting and couldn't answer. A meeting? What kind of meeting has you abandoning your husband and your home to wander around all day? A legal consultation. I just met with my lawyer. At Emily's flat declaration, Helen fell silent for a moment, catching her breath before erupting in an even louder shriek. A legal consultation? Are you out of your mind? Is having police and lawyers involved in our family something to be proud of? Is that what your parents taught you? Yes. I've finally come to my senses. For the first time, I see who I really am. Helen gasped at Emily's cold tone. This whole mess happened because you failed as a wife. When a husband stumbles, it's the wife's job to be his anchor and protect the home. How dare you treat your own husband like a criminal by hiring a lawyer? The home? What kind of home are you talking about, Helen? Is watching your son cheat on his wife and run up her credit cards with designer shopping sprees what it means to protect the home? You said the same thing 5 years ago. That was a mistake. A man working in a competitive world can slip up once. Are you going to hold that over his head for the rest of his life? It's because you're so sensitive and unforgiving that David looks for comfort elsewhere. Helen's complete denial of reality left Emily speechless. She bit her lip, her eyes fixed on the floor. When a mistake is repeated, it's not a mistake anymore. It's a habit. It's his character. You seem to think that covering for your son's misdeeds is your duty as a parent. But I disagree. Don't you talk back to me. How dare you challenge your mother-in-law? I've already had a long talk with David. I told him that a man in his position will naturally attract women, and he needs to be careful. You had a talk with him? You knew he was taking other women to hotels and buying them luxury gifts with my money, and your advice was that women will naturally flock to him. Is that your idea of parenting? Emily's voice began to tremble and rise. Passers-by on the street started to stare, but she didn't care. Lower your voice. Must you embarrass us in public? This is why David is so sick of you and doesn't want to come home. The one who embarrassed me was your son. While I was being kicked out of a doctor's office because I couldn't pay a $50 copay, your son was putting a $4,500 necklace on another woman's neck. Emily finally broke, her voice choked with tears as she screamed into the phone. Suddenly, Helen's tone shifted. She began to pant and wheeze, putting on a dramatic performance. Oh, my goodness, my heart, I can't breathe. This daughter-in-law is trying to kill her mother-in-law with stress. My blood pressure, it's through the roof. It must be 200. If I die, it will be all your fault. Helen, I'm not falling for that act anymore, Emily said icily. You did the same thing 5 years ago. You pretended to collapse, claiming your blood pressure was 200, and we rushed you to the ER, only for the test to show you were perfectly normal. Stop trying to gaslight me with your health. Gas what? You really show your lack of class with every word you speak. Your mother-in-law is telling you she's sick, and you accuse her of putting on an act? Are you even human? Were you human when I was sick? Did you once, ever, ask me if I was okay? A daughter-in-law is expected to suffer in silence, but your son gets a free pass to cheat because it's for business? I am done being your son's insurance policy. Emily wiped her tears with her sleeve, her voice turning cold and hard. Helen, her act having failed, reverted to shrieking. You crawl back home right now. Get on your knees and apologize to David. If you don't, I will find your parents and spit in their faces. The person who needs to apologize is David. And if you so much as go near my parents, I will gather every single piece of evidence of your son's affairs and post it on his company's internal message board. How dare you call your husband by his name? No, he's not even worthy of that anymore. Emily hung up the phone, cutting off Helen's screams. The phone immediately started vibrating again, tormenting her palm. But she silenced it without a second thought. The screen continued to light up with incoming calls, but Emily shoved the phone deep into her purse. Is this what revenge feels like? She wondered, feeling breathless. Emily walked into a nearby cafe and ordered an iced Americano. She sat by the window, taking a long time to compose herself before pulling out her phone again. 8 missed calls. A hollow, bitter laugh escaped her. There were dozens of text messages from Helen, David, and her sister-in-law, Jessica. Don't ruin David's life. What will people think of our family? How dare a daughter-in-law defy her elders? Emily scrolled through the venomous messages until her eyes landed on the last one from Helen. So, what if David spent some money for business? You have to spend money to make money. So they all knew. The whole time. Emily slammed her phone down on the table. Her fingertips trembled. Her entire in-law family had known about David's affair and his extravagant spending. They had actively deceived her, allowing her to be their cash cow so they could maintain their facade. Helen, I'm not your fool anymore. Let your son deal with the debt and the filth he created. I am no longer your family's ATM. Emily typed a short, firm reply and sent it. Then she turned her phone off completely. She took a long sip of the cold coffee. The icy liquid sliding down her throat felt like it was hardening her resolve. It's just the beginning. The money and reputation you all hold, so dear. I'm going to destroy them, one by one. Staring out the window, Emily's eyes held no more hesitation. The tears had dried up, replaced by the cold, sharp glint of a vengeful blade. The doorbell rang with a frantic, desperate intensity, as if it were about to break. Before Emily could even check the intercom, a loud, frantic pounding started on the door. When she opened it, her sister-in-law, Jessica, was standing there, panting. Her makeup was a mess, streaked with tears, and her usual polished demeanor was gone. Emily, please, you have to help me. Can we talk? Jessica pushed past Emily into the living room without waiting for an invitation. Emily took a step back, her eyes cold as she watched her. What is it? Why are you here without calling? Emily, I feel like I'm going to die. Please, help me. Jessica collapsed onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. Emily remained standing, arms crossed, observing the scene with detached curiosity. What's so difficult? I don't have a cent to my name. My husband has been unemployed for 3 months, and instead of looking for a new job, he just sits at home drinking all day. On top of that, I have to pay back the interest on the money I borrowed from David, and the credit card companies are sending nonstop notices. Emily, I'm at my wit's end. Jessica looked up at Emily, her eyes wide and pleading. But Emily simply sat down in a nearby chair, a cold smile playing on her lips. And? Why are you telling me this? Emily, could you just lend me $2,500? I know it's shameless to ask, but the kid's tuition is 3 months overdue, and the school keeps calling. I promise I'll pay you back next month when my husband's severance package comes through. Please, Emily. Jessica reached out to grab Emily's knees, but Emily recoiled, her voice sharp. I don't have any money either. Did you know I was kicked out of the doctor's office yesterday because I couldn't pay a $50 copay? Both of my credit cards have been frozen. But Emily, you have a steady paycheck, and you get that rental income from your parents' property. Please, just this once. Can't you close your eyes and help me out? Before you ask for help, let's talk about your brother's credit cards. Do you really not know why they were frozen? Yet you have the nerve to come here and ask me for money? Emily took out her phone and held up the credit card statement for Jessica to see. Jessica's eyes widened in panic. Weren't they just frozen because they were overdue? I mean, that happens when you're in business. Yes, they were overdue, Emily said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. And I noticed a whole lot of those overdue charges were in your name. $500 at Nordstrom, $300 at a high-end salon in Beverly Hills, and $1,200 worth of household goods from Amazon, all shipped directly to your address. David said he would buy them for me as a gift because I was having a hard time, Jessica stammered. Looking down, Emily let out a laugh of disbelief. A gift from your brother meant he was charging it to my credit card? Is it normal to use your sister-in-law's card to pay for your other sister's living expenses without permission? His card was maxed out. He had no choice. It's just borrowing between family. You're being so unreasonable, Emily. Jessica shot back, her voice rising in indignation. Emily slowly rose from her chair and looked down at her. Does calling it family justify stealing someone else's money? Jessica, the word borrow implies an intention to pay it back. Did you ever pay back a single dime of the $2,000 you borrowed last year? I told you I would. I just couldn't because things are tight. You have plenty of money. Why are you hounding me like this? Whether I have a lot or a little, it's my money. Money I earn with my own sweat and tears. You said you were broke, but you seem to have enough spirit to go shopping at a department store and get your hair done. Jessica trembled with rage at Emily's cold rebuttal. Emily, please, just think of the kids. Help me this one time. David promised he would help me, but he can't give me any money because you froze all the cards. If David made a promise, then the money should come from David's pocket. Why is he trying to be generous by robbing his wife? And Jessica, you knew all along that your brother was cheating, didn't you? That designer bag you posted on social media. It was bought from the same store on the same day he was at that hotel with the other woman. I told you. A friend bought me that. Why do you keep accusing me? Jessica stomped her foot, screaming in frustration. Emily coldly held up her phone again. Fine. Give me your friend's name and number. I'll call her right now and confirm. You can't, can you? Because the friend's name is Emily's credit card. Jessica's mouth snapped shut. Without another word, Emily walked to the front door and threw it open. Get out. Now. The sight of you makes me sick. Emily, if I leave now, you're basically sentencing me to death. You're so cruel. How could you change so much? I didn't change. I just woke up. The days of you using my money for free are over. Go cry to your brother. Emily coldly pushed Jessica out the door. Jessica, clutching her purse, spat venom at her. You'll regret this. Emily, I'm going to tell my mom everything. That her daughter-in-law threw her own sister out onto the street. I'll make sure she pushes David to divorce you. Go ahead. I was planning on cutting your entire family out of my life anyway. The enemy was always the enemy. I was just finally taking out the trash. Emily slammed the door shut, cutting off Jessica's screams. Leaning against it, she felt her entire body go weak, her hands trembling. But no tears came. Instead, she felt a profound sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted. Slumping onto the sofa, Emily took a deep breath and picked up her phone. She sent a short, firm message to her lawyer. Please proceed with the legal separation of finances, the lawsuit for the credit card debt, and the divorce proceedings as quickly as possible. I will not give them a single penny. Emily stared out the window at the setting sun, her jaw clenched in determination. For years, she had been exploited and betrayed under the guise of family. Now, she was finally walking out of that hell on her own 2 feet. Your hell is just beginning, David. And your family too, she thought. You all laughed at my kindness. Now, you'll see how that same kindness can become the weapon of your destruction. In Emily's eyes, there was no longer sadness, only the cold, sharp glint of a promise. This wasn't the end. This was the true beginning of her life. The air in the lawyer's office was thick with a heavy silence. Emily stared at the thick stack of documents on the desk, her vision blurry. Emily, this is more serious than we thought, the lawyer said, tapping a finger on one of the pages and shaking his head. Look at these statements. Everything is in your name. Emily swallowed hard, her throat dry. Exactly how much is it? The debt I'm responsible for? 4 credit cards, 6 installment loan agreements, and 2 recent high-interest personal loans. The total debt comes to $90,000. Unfortunately, you are listed as the primary party on every single one of these contracts. The number hit Emily like a physical blow. $90,000. For an ordinary office worker like her, it was an astronomical sum, an amount that would take years of breathless work to accumulate. Her voice trembled as she asked, "What about my husband's name? It was David who spent all that money. Isn't there any debt under his name?" The lawyer flipped through the papers with a grim expression. "The only debt in your husband's name is a $3,000 overdue balance on his personal credit card. Other than that, his record is clean. It appears that since his own credit was completely ruined, he was unable to secure any more loans and simply used your name to finance his entire lifestyle. That can't be possible. He's the one who spent it all," Emily cried, her voice choked with desperation. "He took the cards for client dinners, to fix his car. The hotels, the designer stores, the locations all match his movements." But the lawyer's response was brutally realistic. Legally, the person whose name is on the account is the one ultimately responsible for the debt. Even if you have proof that your husband was the one swiping the cards, the fact remains that you consented to the accounts being opened and lent him your name. For now, it will be very difficult for you to evade responsibility. "So what do I do?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "Is my life now forfeit because of money I never even spent? For the time being, you will have to assume the debt payments. However, we can file a lawsuit against your husband to claim reimbursement. But given that he has almost no personal assets, actually collecting that money will be a long and difficult process. The first and most important step is to proceed with a legal separation of finances to prevent any further damage." Emily slumped back in her chair, utterly defeated. The world went dark around her as tears streamed down her cheeks. The years of trust and sacrifice she had dedicated to her husband and his family had returned to her as a $90,000 mountain of debt. It was too cruel to believe. "If we separate our finances, Will he be unable to use my name anymore? Yes. We will not only freeze all the cards, but also cut off any jointly held assets like the EasyPass and linked bank accounts. It will completely prevent him from taking out any more loans or entering into contracts under your name. I just need you to sign this power of attorney form. With a trembling hand, Emily took the pen. In that brief moment of signing, her entire body shook like a leaf, but she wrote her three-name signature with more clarity and purpose than ever before. This wasn't just a document. It was her declaration of war, the severing of her chains. When she returned home, exhausted, she found David lounging on the sofa as if he owned the place. As soon as he saw her, he snapped. "Hey, where have you been wandering around all morning? You didn't even make me breakfast, and my cards are still frozen. I couldn't even buy lunch." "I was at the lawyer's office," Emily replied coolly, dropping her bag on the floor. "Sorting out our debt." David's face twisted in anger. "A lawyer? Are you insane? Why would a lawyer be involved in a private marital issue? And what do you mean, sorting out our debt?" "It turns out our debt is $90,000. The money you spent gallivanting around town under my name. And yet, the only debt under your name is $3,000. Funny how that works, isn't it?" Emily's voice was a blade cutting through the silence of the room. David looked momentarily flustered, but then he just shrugged with infuriating nonchalance. "So what? It was my money I spent. It was all an investment for our family's future. We're married, so who cares whose name it's under? It's all community property anyway." "Community property? Don't make me laugh," she spat. "The debt is all in my name, but there are no assets. What's community about that? Did you even bother to ask me before you went shopping for designer bags and staying at luxury hotels? That wasn't an investment. It was theft." "Watch your mouth. Who are you calling a thief? You lived off the money I brought in too. My cards were maxed out, so I used yours. Is that such a mortal sin?" David roared, jumping to his feet. He looked menacing, but Emily didn't even flinch. "I'm not listening to that garbage anymore. As of today, every card and account in my name that you had access to has been frozen. I've also filed for a legal separation of our finances. From now on, you can pay your own debts." "What? You froze everything? You've really lost it," he seethed. "I have a crucial client meeting tomorrow. If I can't pay for the dinner, the deal is off. Are you going to take responsibility for that? Unfreeze them now. Your business? Is taking another woman out for expensive meals and buying her handbags your idea of business? You have zero results to show for it. All you do is rack up expenses. That's not business. That's begging. Use your own card, or that fantastic corporate card you're always talking about." David's face turned a blotchy purple at her sarcastic tone. His pride wounded, he clenched his fists and growled. "Are you really going to take this to the end? If I go down, you go down with me. Are we strangers? No. From now on, we're worse than strangers. Your debts, your affairs. I'll be seeing you in court to discuss every last detail. You can look forward to it." Just then, David's phone rang loudly. It was his mother, Helen. He glared at Emily with murder in his eyes as he answered. "Yeah, Mom, you're not going to believe this. My wife has lost her mind. She hired a lawyer and is trying to burn the whole family to the ground." Helen's shrill voice could be heard from the other end, so loud it was as if she were on speaker. "Is she there? Put her on the phone. A family shouldn't air its dirty laundry with lawyers. A wife is supposed to protect the home, not sabotage her husband's future." Emily snatched the phone from David's hand and spoke into it icily. "Helen, is it family to saddle me with $90,000 of debt? You knew your son was showering another woman with luxury gifts. You knew where that money was coming from, didn't you? He had to spend that money to make money. It's a wife's duty to support her husband. If you just supported him, he would have the confidence to succeed. My support ended 5 years ago. The result of me trusting you and forgiving him back then is this. From now on, I'm doing things by the book. I am done being your family's doormat." Emily ended the call and tossed the phone at David's feet. She walked past his stunned figure, went into the bedroom, and locked the door. Sinking onto the bed, she spread out the documents from the lawyer's office again. Tears fell onto the pages, tears of misery, but underneath it all was a feeling of liberation, of finally finding herself again. Divorce is the only answer, she thought, clenching her jaw. No, divorce is just the beginning. She vowed to shed the parasitic humans who had been feeding off her and to piece her shattered life back together, one shard at a time. She could hear David pounding on the door, spewing curses, but she was no longer afraid. Her heart had already left this hellish house and was on the cold, lonely road to revenge. Emily stood at the front door, her hand gripping the handle of a heavy suitcase. She glanced from David's expensive dress shoes in the rack to her own worn-out sneakers, summarizing years of her life in a single, silent moment. Her vibrant youth and devoted middle age were about to end, right here at the threshold of this narrow hallway. David, who had been sprawled on the sofa, scrambled to his feet, swaying slightly. "Are you really leaving with that suitcase? I didn't think you actually had the guts. You're a real piece of work." "Yes, I'm leaving." Emily's reply was as short and cold as ice. "And I will never cross this threshold again." David snorted, a cruel smirk on his face. "Hey, don't delude yourself. Who do you think is going to want you at your age? After a divorce? You're 53. Who in their right mind wants a 50-something divorcee? The world out there is a cruel place, you foolish woman. I'm not leaving with the hope that someone will want me. I'm leaving to escape the hell that is you. I would rather die alone than live another day looking at your face." Without another moment of hesitation, Emily turned the doorknob. Panicked, David rushed forward and grabbed her arm. "You're going to regret this. Don't you dare. How long do you think you can survive out there on your own, paying rent and bills? You'll come crawling back in less than a day, crying that you have no money. You should worry about yourself," Emily said, shaking his hand off as if it were something vile. "Now that your access to my credit is cut off, you won't even be able to buy those women a cup of coffee. Let's see how long you last. I, on the other hand, am going to live a much, much better life. You'll be back." David screamed at her back as she walked out. "You'll be on your knees, begging me to take you back within a week." Emily didn't look back. She slammed the door shut behind her. The cold air of the hallway filled her lungs, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she could breathe. As she waited for the elevator, her phone buzzed frantically. It was her mother-in-law, Helen. Emily declined the call and stared at the screen. A sharp text message arrived instantly. "You get back in that house right now. How dare you drive a nail through this old woman's heart? If you don't go back, I swear I'll show up at your workplace." Emily deleted the message without a flicker of emotion. When the elevator doors opened on the first floor, she felt as though she were stepping into a different world, a world of freedom. She arrived at the small studio apartment a friend had offered her and set down her luggage. Opening the window wide, she was met not with the stale air of her old apartment, but with a breeze that smelled of liberty. Just then, her phone rang again. This time it was her sister-in-law, Jessica. Emily sighed deeply and answered. "Emily, you really left? Mom is a complete mess," crying her eyes out. "How can you be so irresponsible? David is losing his mind." "Irresponsible?" Emily said calmly. "I think that word is better suited for your brother, who saddled me with $90,000 in debt while he was off having affairs." "But you still have a paycheck," Jessica cried. "David's cards are all maxed out. He's about to be blacklisted by the credit agencies, and he can't even go out on sales calls. How can you be so cruel as to stab your own family in the back?" Emily stared quietly out the window. "He can't go on sales calls, or he can't fund his extravagant lifestyle with my money anymore. Jessica, do you really have no idea how much I put up with for you and your family all these years? Emily, please, just reconsider. What if Mom collapses from high blood pressure? David keeps saying he wants to die. You know how hard things are for me right now. If you abandon us too, we'll all starve." I know all of it. But why is that my responsibility anymore?" Emily's voice was flat. "We're strangers now." "No, we're worse than strangers. We're enemies. But we're family. Blood is thicker than water. How can you just cut us off like that?" At Jessica's insistence, a cold, bitter laugh escaped Emily's lips. "Family? Is it family to steal someone's identity to buy designer bags and stay in luxury hotels? Is it family to bury someone in debt without their consent and expect them to just understand? That's not called family. That's called being a parasite." David had no choice. It was for business. He was going to pay it all back when he succeeded. He didn't have no choice. He just didn't do it. He never had any intention of taking responsibility or feeling sorry. "Jessica, I'm hanging up now. You can tell your sob story to a judge in court. The only thing you'll be getting from me is a bill for your share of the damages." Emily hung up the phone before Jessica could scream another word. She opened her contacts and, one by one, blocked the numbers for David, Helen, and Jessica. As their names disappeared from her screen, A perfect, profound silence filled the small apartment. Outside, the sun was setting in a blaze of red. Emily sank deep into the sofa and whispered, "It's quiet. It's so quiet." Strangely, she didn't feel like crying. Instead, she felt light, as if a massive boulder had been lifted from her shoulders. The next morning, a Saturday, Emily slept in without a care in the world. In her old life, she would have been woken up by her mother-in-law's demanding calls, forced to go over and cook breakfast while being berated. But now, there was only the aroma of fresh coffee and a single piece of toast. This is peace, she thought, a small smile on her face as she sat by the sunlit window. This is what I have forgotten. In the afternoon, a friend who had heard the news came by and held her hand tightly. "Emily, you went through so much. I'm so glad you're out. From now on, just think about yourself. If you need anything, you can always lean on me." At her friend's warm words, tears welled up in her eyes. But Emily just nodded bravely. That evening, a simple bowl of instant ramen she made for herself tasted sweeter than any fancy meal she had ever eaten at a department store restaurant. Her blocked numbers list showed dozens of missed messages, but she received no notifications. They were surely filled with curses like "Don't ruin David's life, and you'll get what's coming to you," but Emily had decided to no longer be swayed by them. On Monday morning, when Emily returned to work at the hospital, her colleagues were surprised. "Emily, you're glowing today. Did something good happen?" "Yes," she replied with a bright smile as she took her seat at the counter. "I did a major house cleaning. Got rid of all the old, useless, rotten things. I feel so refreshed." On the bus ride home, she received a text from her lawyer. The divorce petition had been officially filed. Emily looked out the window and smiled to herself. "I can finally see the end." Back in her small studio, as she locked the door, Emily realized for the first time in her life that being alone wasn't the same as being lonely. In this space, no one criticized her, and no one was after her wallet. Late that night, a text came from an unknown number. "My dear daughter-in-law, this is your mother-in-law. I need to talk to you. Please, please answer my call." Without a moment's hesitation, Emily blocked that number too. In the quiet room, bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight, Emily closed her eyes in peace. "I escaped. I really, truly escaped." A serene, victorious smile spread across her face. This was the second act of her life, and it would no longer be a story of sacrifice for others, but a story written entirely for herself. As the author of this story, reflecting on Emily's journey brings many thoughts to mind. We often mistakenly believe that the bond of family is a shield that excuses all flaws. But as Emily's case shows, for some, that shield becomes a prison where one-sided exploitation and deceit are normalized. The reaction of David and his family, especially after Emily had already forgiven his infidelity once before, teaches us a painful lesson. Forgiveness offered to an unrepentant person doesn't inspire change. It only reinforces their belief that they can get away with even worse behavior. The $90,000 debt was painful, but what hurt Emily more was the shamelessness of those who took her devotion for granted, hiding their parasitic behavior behind the excuses of business and family. David's gaslighting question, "What are you going to do at your age?" ironically proves his own incompetence and his inability to survive for a moment without his wife. We should all cheer for Emily's courage in choosing to stand on her own. True peace doesn't come from endless endurance, but from having the strength to decisively cut out the toxic relationships that are eating away at our soul. Is the family in your life a sanctuary, or is it a cage? I hope Emily's new beginning can help you find your answer.